here is the agenda for our time today. So we're going to do welcome and introductions, which is what we just got the opportunity to do. Introduce you all to the Power to the People initiative, what it's about, how we're going to get ourselves grounded in this initiative for the programmatic year. And then the last hour of our time together, we're going to do a breakout, which is going to be more of a town hall and open forum. And then you'll have your call to action. So let's take a pause here. I know it's just a number right there on that screen. And so in a lot of ways, we walk around with a false narrative of who we are, of what this country is, and how it has been the foundation of our conditioning through our educational journey and introduction to this American society. And what I mean by that is the false narrative of who we are, and a narrative of greatness and achievement, of course, but which fundamentally is incomplete. And I think really Brian Stevenson says it best: we are a nation of post-genocide society. And so when that person who landed on Plymouth Rock came over with his people, this country killed millions of indigenous people through famine and war and disease. And then America created a narrative of racial and gender difference and created that to use a rhetoric to disconnect people from their humanity. So like indigenous people, referring to them as savages, as Africans and Caribbean people from all around the globe, not only calling them slaves, but enslaving them. And so in order to justify evil for the people and the endeavor to devour, to feel righteously so. So we created a constitution that talked about equality and justice, but didn't extend that to the millions of natives who were dying. And then we used that racial difference narrative to get comfortable with over 2.5 centuries of slavery. And so we are a post-slavery society, and we created a narrative that made slavery about race. And so let's fast forward to hundreds of years later. And on this screen, you see the number 923. And that's the number of humans that were struck down by police in 2021 alone. Just in this year, 923 people. And so 13%, that's the percentage for which Black people make up the population of this country. 26% Black people have been 26% of those killed by police in 2021, despite being only 13% of the population. And I do want to say, if you need the auto script we do have the script, you would just click the button, but we did enable that. And so from 2013 to 2020, 98.3% of killings by police officers have not resulted in police officers being, there you go. You should have access to it now. Okay. From 2013 to 2020, 98.3% of killings by police officers have not resulted in police officers being charged with a crime, let alone convicted. And then in 2021, there has only been 12 days where police did not kill someone. Of the people who are killed by police each year, Black people are 3 times more likely to be killed and 1.3 times more likely to be unarmed than white people. So I just want to say, and I always get a little shaky when I start having to be in conversation about this. And no matter how many times we have to come together to educate, to learn, to strategize, we cannot forget to honor the humanity of those for whom we are all gathered to get together today on one accord. And so I say that because sometimes in these spaces, we can subjectify humans. And I just want to make sure that we can honor the people who have lost their lives. And I just want you all to unmute yourself, and you don't need to read this. I just want you all to unmute yourself. And after I read this, if you all can support and affirm by in saying it shall be, with just simply offering the affirmation of Ashe. And so after I read this, if we can all come off mute, and if you can't come off mute, you can put it in a chat box, in order to honor those lives, just saying Ashe. And so their bodies may be buried, but their humanity and their souls shall never be forgotten and shall forever soar.
Ashe.
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 Just want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you to our ancestors who continues to extend their grace and be with us here. And so following the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the continuous cycles of murders of Black people by police, Ignite launched the Power to the People initiative to empower young women to pursue appointments to police oversights and boards and commissions. And so we recognize that, police oversight commissions or civilian boards is not going to be the thing that solves the problem. It is only addressing the results of the problem, not necessarily getting down to the root of it all. We also recognize that people are dying today. And so as an immediate call to action is something that we need to do as we continue to gather and as we continue to strategize on reimagining what community safety and investment looks like. This is something that we can do right now. And so Power to the People boot camps, which is a 7-week-long series where you'll learn the history of policing in America and how police violence disproportionately impacts Black Americans, how oversight bodies function to regulate police departments and hold the officers accountable for violence, and walk away equipped with the resources and a network to pursue an appointment to your local police oversight and board commission. In a lot of ways, some of these commissions could be very political, and then you look and see who is serving on those boards, and it's not really doing the job of which it's supposed to do. And so ensure equity in appointments is also a part of the process. And so what we really want to do in this work is really center community. And so it's not just about showing up in all these different communities across the country. Like we have the solution, we know the problem, and here's what we need to do. Is really centering community voices. It's centering the people who are the most marginalized, the people who are the most impacted, and not only being a part of the discussions, but being a part of the decision-making towards change. And being intentional on not just centering community voice, but making sure the most, again, marginalized voices are holding the mics and steering the conversation. Because a lot of times in movement spaces and organizations, it becomes like gatekeepers of the movement, and we actually lock out those voices. And so we want to be extremely intentional with not only who we're bringing to the table, but make sure that the community is a part of the building of the table thereof. And so here are some of the ways that we're going to be building community. So that's through community forums and roundtables, which is an opportunity to cultivate community conversations around policing, safety, equitable resources, exploring all the different avenues people want to see change, and building awareness on the different strategies to get there. And then also legislative advocacy. So not just building coalitions and petitioning for police oversight commissions where they don't exist, but also centering bills on policing and police violence that the community cares about, and giving them the tools to advocate for those. And then lastly, this national teach-in on police violence in America, which will be an opportunity to educate our community, not only just on the history of policing, but also the systems of oppression that still exist today, and how we're going to dismantle this oppression collectively. And so I do have a voice here with us that I would like to spotlight, but before I introduce her, I just want to continue to reground us in the purpose of why we're even here today. And again, going back to we have humans who are not only just dying at the hands of this violence, but we have people who are also in jail and prison that should be home with their families. And then people who are just living in a perpetuated state of fear. I don't know if you know what it's like to be in the car, and if you get pulled over, not sure if you're going to make it out of that situation. And I didn't know what that was until I became an adult and was able to really understand what was happening around me. But I do remember growing up, and anytime that I was driving with my Black dad, we always got pulled over, always. And to the point, I remember us having to get out the car on multiple occasions without a warrant, just to search us. A little girl on the side of the highway having to get out the car. I know what that feels like. And so there is a heaviness every time I have to not only be in a space and talk about this, but also know who, on behalf of who I'm talking about it for. And so there is a sense of urgency for which we need to continue to push the work forward. And we can't let that flame that we ignited last year in 2020 to die out, because this is not a trend. And we just can't let, and you know, it didn't start in 2020. So we got to continue to push the needle forward. And for that regard, I just want to offer up one of my favorite MLK quotes, which if something isn't done and done in a hurry to bring us out of our long years of neglect, the whole world is doomed. And I just want you to look around the world, look around what you see happening in your community, look at what's happening not only in our ecosystem, look to Mother Nature, just look around and pay attention to what's going on in the world. And so I do want to do a spotlight here before we transition into the open forum and town hall piece of this. And joining me today is Tiami Lockett, who is the national organizer with Transgender Law Center, and who I'm going to spotlight in order to pass the mic to a group of humans who are often disregarded and left out of the conversation. And also in this space, we have representatives from some organizations who are moving the needle around social, racial and gender justice, and we'll hear more from them in our open forum. And so I want to introduce to you all Tiami, who is a native of Arkansas and current resident of Little Rock, and she identifies as a woman of trans experience of African descent. She is interested in conversations about restorative and transformative justice. She is an advocate for ending criminalization as a Black woman of trans experience living with HIV in Arkansas. The potential for incarceration is ever present. Tiami believes that that ending bailouts and pretrial detention, diverting resources to community for education, awareness, and sensitivity training can eliminate the continued murders of Black trans body everywhere. And so I'm going to stop screen sharing. And I'm working on like 20 devices. Y'all got 20 devices up, it feels like. So let me figure out how to do this. A little patience while I transition us. I appreciate the patience. I had to kick myself out. Just do that. Stop. There we go. And then I'm going to spotlight Tiani. There we go. There she is.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to be in this space with you today. And before anything, I just want to ask you how you're doing.
I'm actually doing well. I am. Today is a good day. It's Saturday. It's been a really good week. I've been looking forward to this since our conversation almost, 2 weeks ago? So yeah, I'm excited to be here and just ready to go.
Thank you so much for being here. And I know I shared some questions with you, but I would love, outside of what is in a bio and what is on paper, I would love if you can just share a little bit about who you are and what you do and what's calling you to the work that you're doing here today.
Thank you. Sure. Well, everything that you needed to know, like about what brought me here, it was in the bio. But there is just me being transgender here in the South. I have always dealt with police in some shape, form, or fashion. And it started back home. Before the HIV diagnosis, before having transgender as a terminology, I was simply just me. I didn't identify with pronouns because they tried to place me on the male spectrum, and that's not how I identified. I never identified as gay. I was mocked and picked on, bullied, to the point that anytime that I was interacting with police, and they just simply didn't believe that I was who I was. So there was some degradation there, a lot of fear anytime that I interacted with police, and that stopped in my late 30s. The last time they just cuffed me, walked me around in this empty building in Little Rock here in Arkansas, cuffed, shackled to the cuffs were digging into my skin. They had me in one of the coldest rooms that they could find. It was summertime and I wasn't dressed for that. I couldn't wipe like myself. I was freezing and they left me in there for 45 minutes. So it became really clear to me early on that my life meant nothing to them. And so for a long time, I lived in survival mode. But what brought me to this work actually was my HIV diagnosis. I was diagnosed with HIV in 2012. I wasn't sure what to do. We didn't talk about HIV here in Arkansas, right? In home, we didn't talk about stuff like that. And so we whispered things, but we had no real proof, no real facts, right? And so I had to educate myself first on how to live, how to get the medicines that I need. That took about 3 months, got into treatment, and it was really quick. I became undetectable. I lived my life. I was sober at the time, right? Because going through so much, you try to escape the best way that you can. When you feel like there is no hope and you know that you're this beacon for so many people, but your life is just horrible to where all you do is contemplate how can you end it without leaving so many people hurt, right? But I wasn't happy. I really wasn't happy. And so what happened was I chose to speak for the first time at the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS. Did not know what I was getting myself into. And I spoke from the heart, as I'm doing today, about my story and what led me to that meeting, which was Arkansas passing the Affordable Care Act. So now around the time of my diagnosis, I'm seeing some hope for myself because now I can have comprehensive health care. Doing what I needed to do to stay healthy, people recognized me and they invited me to this meeting. I spoke. I was in recovery, like I said. So my formula for telling them was what happened, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. That's the 3-step formula for the 12-step program in telling your story. So I told them that. And I was invited to be a keynote speaker. Didn't even know what that was. Again, just telling my story. But people became more interested in who is this Black trans woman openly admitting that she's living with HIV and from the South and articulate. So it became really clear, really fast that people will use you and use you and use you. So the more I taught myself about political education and how the laws impacted me, because just beside like regular interactions with police, what really loomed over me was criminalization because of my HIV status. When I went looking for research on how to live, what was out there, what services would be provided, when I did find them, I could not receive any services until I signed a piece of paper saying that if I did not disclose my HIV status to my sexual partner, then it's a felony. And if I did not disclose to medical providers providing a medical service, then it's a misdemeanor. So now there's this hanging over my head, like basically I have to disclose who I am, that part of myself, and that's all I become subjected as versus the whole being that I am and what I bring to the table. And so that's actually what brought me to this work. I met Cecilia Chung from that meeting. She started Positively Trans. I joined on as a steering committee member. People started noticing me. I joined the HIV Caucus, which is a national network of people living with HIV organizations. And so my life just took off in a whole different direction. Wasn't expecting that. But I remember the night that I really learned that I could have HIV, I cried, of course, thinking I was gonna die. I'm Black, I'm poor, I have no resources out there. And I made a promise to my higher power that if I made it through this, I would promote as much awareness and education as I could to anyone who would listen. That was my promise to my higher power. I made that in the bed at the recovery house where they gave me the mouth swab, right? And the opportunity presented itself 4 years after that, because I was in denial in 2010 and the confirmatory test happened in 2012. And so in 2014, I was presented with the opportunity to go and make good on a promise that I said to my higher power. Yeah, so that's a little bit about who I am. And I know that I only have so much time. So any questions or clarifications, like we said, be bold. I'm here.
Wow. Well, that was powerful. And I wish we had the rest of the day so I could just sit at your feet and listen. That was powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know we had a pretty lengthy conversation, just the two of us, but I really thought it was important for especially our young women in our community to hear directly from you. And we do have a lot of our fellows here at Ignite who are organizing across the country. And I knew how important it was to hear from you. So I just want to thank you for your vulnerability with us today.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Ashe.
And I do know that not in a lot of ways, just as Black people, we are assumed representative of a community in every space that we walk through, no matter the glory or the pain, no matter what we do. A lot of times it's always just concluded that that is a representation of all of our people. And I know that you can't speak for all trans women or even just all Black trans women. But what I would love for us to do is talk about some of the pressing issues facing trans women and what are some of the barriers trans women face when trying to get involved with the movement against police violence in America.
Thank you. Well, I live in a state where laws have been enacted, right? Specifically targeting people who identify as trans. So there's that. And there has been an onslaught of these laws like targeting us since the last administration. So what is happening is they're making it like legal to hate, legal to discriminate, in a place that already tells us that we're no good, we're expendable. We have issues with housing. That's not my story. I've had my issues with police, but right now I feel somewhat safe because I run this, all of this. You know, I don't answer to anyone. And it took me a while to get there. That's not the story of a lot of my trans family, period. We are murdered by police. Trans men, Black trans men, are among that number that have been murdered by police, right? That's something that is impacted simply because of them being a Black body. And then it's learned that it was a trans person, but it starts with being Black, right? And I can't wait to join the story where we're talking about the history of police here in America. And so some of those, you know, out of those issues, like I said, we have issues with discrimination against housing. Some of us are unemployed. And there is nothing inherently wrong with sex work, but they criminalize us because of that as well, right? And I'm just trying to survive. There were times when I had to do what I had to do and knew that it wasn't safe for me. I didn't, but like, I can't be the one that sleeps in the street. We've been thrown away. We can't get into shelters, right? We can't use facilities that align with our gender identity, right? And they're making this legal. They're making this legal. So we have so many systems of oppression that are targeting us specifically for being who we are. And we can't just like get onto these committees because like when I tried to report a rape, it became evident that I did not need to report to this police that I didn't disclose to my attacker that I'm living with HIV. I'm talking about precedents here in Arkansas, things that we're battling. I'm trying to survive a vicious attack. And the law tells me that I should have even told him that I'm living with HIV when he's already exerting power, dominance, and physical control over my person. Like, I make it make sense. And those are some of the stories that I've had to hear. Like, that's my story. Those and stories like that in the sessions where I've been amongst trans people. And I was thinking that I was all alone. I didn't have the terminology until 2014. I literally thought I was alone and was the only person feeling this. And it broke my heart to learn that I wasn't the only one going through this. And we joined together, formed Positively Trans, working on policies that affect us, right? And we've been doing this since 2015. So now I went from being a steering committee member to actually running the program and being hired by the organization. So there's still some work to do. And I hope that answered.
Well, you said we've been thrown away. That's what struck me the hardest. And when we talk about systemic oppression, I don't think people fathom with the fact that it's systems of oppression, systems being things that have been enacted with the intention to oppress people. And so
like law enforcement.
Exactly. And when you say we've been thrown away, that is a result of the systemic oppression, and all that of your existence is trying to be in resistance. So I can't imagine what that is like. But I do know that it's a lot of our people in this very moment who is grappling with that. And my final question for you is going to be, as one of the most marginalized groups in America, how can we center, and specifically Black trans women, in these different spaces? And how do we mobilize and civically engage young trans women?
Thank you. So it basically boils down to like having the space. We're having to build from the ground up, right? Mm-hmm. We have fought for funding. We're finally getting that stream happening, right? And so as a result, like, we have been helping each other out of our houses. Now we're building infrastructure so that we can house each other, right? And so When we don't have that, it basically starts with just creating the space for those, that sipper community, right? As much as you want to help, start there. Start there, honor their leadership, because all we've had is each other, right? And it takes some time when we're dealing with people who aren't in our community, and we know how we have been impacted by starting with our families, the people who were supposed to love us the most. So there, it's going to take some time to build trust, and not all of them are ready to jump in, just like I wasn't. I would rather get the education myself than to be out there in the street. I can't do that. I know my limitations. Because of all of my interactions with police, I literally get stricken with fear around police. Sometimes can't move. And with me being who I am, sometimes that's all it takes. And I don't know if I'm going to make it home, you know? Yeah. And the second part of the question?
How do we mobilize and civically engage young trans women?
We're trying right now to build the generational gap between the youth, who are often like not even thought about in the conversation, right? The laws that are affecting us right now are targeting the youth. It's going to trickle up to the trans elders, right? But for right now, I have some type of security when it comes to things that are important to me, my healthcare. So we're framing the conversation around healthcare, family, and being an ally and an advocate, and actually letting them share their stories of how this is impacting them. Sometimes we want to speak for the youth when the youth are more than capable to actually share their story, right? And so that's what we have to do. We have to break down the generational divide, as you were referencing earlier. The gatekeeping, that's the whole mentality. I've been doing this for so long, you can't tell me anything. And then they want to like act like millennials are bad people. I hate that framing. I truly do. Because those are our next wave of leaders, but you have some people who don't want to relinquish that power.
Thank you for that, Tiami. And my biggest takeaways was creating a space, building trust, and honoring their leadership. And that is a part of the building of the generational gap that centers young trans women, and not sharing their stories on behalf of them, but them being more than capable. And that goes back to honoring their leadership, but centering them in this space instead of on behalf of them, in order to not be a gatekeeper.
That may mean you have to go to a ball. I don't go to balls, but that may be what you have to do. You know, like you have to meet people where they are. I have been, but I'm old. I'm old. I'm 44 years old. I ain't got time for that. I partied when I was in my 20s.
Shut up and stop. I'm sorry.
I'm serious. I am serious. I was like, wait, they're talking about young people. Do they think I'm young? Thank you.
You know what they say, hey, black truly don't crack.
Black don't crack. Yeah. Oh my God, I was blessed with my mom's genes. Thank God.
Yes, my mom does look like my sister. She really does. People will mistake that often. But yes, I just want to say thank you so much. That was powerful for me, not only just to be in conversation with you again, but share this with our community, and really just a call to action to all the different leaders who are on this call right now, and the intentionality behind cultivating and creating spaces that are inclusive of all of these different voices, and meeting people where they are. It's not expecting them to show up, but you have to go to them. And so I take that, I honor that, and then I also offer to you this community of Ignite and what we can do to support you in the work that you're doing. So I know we'll continue to be in these conversations, but just know that you have this Ignite family, and we want to get as many young trans women civically and politically engaged, and we have the resources to do it. So please use us. Use us. We ready to work.
Okay. And I know them. I do a lot of work national, so they'll be coming in from everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. And can we all just give some hearts or some warm words in a chat for Tiami, just taking this time to be with us in community. It's truly appreciated. And I mean, we have been doing phenomenal with time. We're a little bit ahead of time, but I do want to honor that 5-minute break. But if there's like a burning question that you have or anything that you just want to get off you, is say to Tiami. We have 2 minutes and I want to offer that to you. So I'm going to pause. And if there's anybody who want to come off mute to say anything for that matter, feel free to do so now.
I just wanted to quickly say that the conversation around gender justice in general and creating an intentional space for, young women, that idea is shifting and becoming more inclusive. And I am just looking for that brighter future when we can really have that inclusivity built into every single space that centers women, because trans women are women. And I just really, really appreciate you contributing to that space. And I know that as Ignite, that's something that we are valuing and trying to move towards being intentional and open about. And it's just really meaningful to me that you're here.
Mm-hmm. All right, and we have 1 minute. So Tiami, if there's any final thought or a piece of advice you want to offer these courageous people all over the country as they go back into the battlefields, anything that you want to, your last seed that you want to plant or water seeds thereof, this is that
Thank
time.
You. I can't wait to learn from y'all, because I'm actually being inspired to continue being the change that I want to see. And so if I can actually get it in my head that I could be that, person, I need it. I don't know. I know my people need me. And this is one way that I'm going to educate myself and them so that we can move forward into the future. So thank y'all. Thank y'all for having me today.
Thank you for that. And I think I want to echo that there are people who are assigned to us. And so as we show up, we are literally shifting trajectory in ways that we are not going to be able to see with our human eyes. And so even when we don't see the impact we're making, just by you showing up, that is impact. So